For more on this, we want to bring in CBS News contributor and Republican strategist Frank Luntz. So, Frank, let's start with the president's 2005 tax returns. Is this revelation significant, and what can these details tell us about President Trump?
Well, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, that we were done with the 2016 campaign, you go back to his tax returns. There are three issues here. Number one is that this isn't a priority for most Americans. This wouldn't even rank in your top 10 at a time when things like health care reform and fixing our crumbling infrastructure and national security should be getting top billing. We're actually spending so much time rehashing something that in this case is 12 years old. Second is that how did they get this information? The idea that this is 2 pages from something that's more than a decade old just feeds the assumption from not just Trump voters but others that the media is simply out to get him. And that's not helpful right now. We need a strong, credible, believable press that can hold the president and Congress accountable for the things that it says and things that it does. Now, and third is it's clear that he actually paid his taxes, that this is a guy who paid over $30 million that year. And so there is no there. The press has every right and a serious responsibility to hold the president accountable for the things that he says and the things that he does. But something like this does not push the story forward and actually makes it more difficult to communicate the things that the American people not just want to know, but need to know.
But one of the things that he said was that he would release his tax returns. So why do you think he hasn't?
After the audit. Correct? Isn't that what he said?
Yes.
After the audit. So you have to tell the whole story. I don't want to be critical of you, but that's the very point, is that the public thinks that it's getting only half or even a third of the story. So you've got to do the whole picture. And frankly, we should be talking about health care. That legislation's coming up for a vote next week. A heck of a lot more Americans are affected by health care, by Obamacare, than they are by whether or not the president releases his tax returns.
And let's talk about that, Frank, that health care reform bill. There has been mounting criticism over the plan from both Republicans and Democrats. So how do you see this vote playing out?
The Republicans have not done an effective job communicating. They have not reminded people of not only the damage of Obamacare, but the fact that it's not just running out of steam, it could cease to exist. Look, the president promised that you would pay less for your health care under his system, and yet tens of millions of people are paying more. He promised that he would make health care more simple, more easy to access. Just ask anyone who's engaged in trying to get health care right now how difficult it is. He said that you could keep your doctor, your hospital, your health care plan, and that turned out not to be true, and I'm an example of it. I lost my health care last year, and I'm someone who never applied for any kind of benefit from it. I'm the last person you want to fire from health care reform. But the Republicans have instead focused on too much on their changes rather than the fact that we have to fix. It's not necessarily repeal and replace, but we have to fix what we have. And frankly, there is no Democratic support on the House or Senate side. From the interviews that I've been doing, not one Democrat is engaged in helping the Republicans improve our current health care system. And that's a real problem.
Okay, so if you were to give some advice you say the Republicans are not selling this the way they should. If you were to give out advice, what advice would you give them?
Well, I'll give you an example. They talk about competition because the Republicans are so stuck in the theory, in the ideology, in the policy, which is what you want from a member of Congress when they're holding their meetings and when they're crafting the legislation, but it's not what you want when they're explaining it and educating the public. It's not competition that the American people want. It's choices. It's options. It's the sense of being in control. When Republicans talk about Medicaid expansion, it's not a focus on who is going to pay more and who's going to pay less. I'm watching the Democrats quite effectively talk about Republicans offering those who are wealthy a tax cut as part of this. It isn't a tax cut. It was a surcharge that the Obama administration added to those people that is simply being repealed, and yet they're not explaining that effectively. I got to tell you something. If they don't get their communication act together shortly, they're going to find that the public will turn against them. It's not just a Washington battle right now. It's a battle for the hearts and minds of the American people. And frankly, the GOP isn't being effective.
Great insight from Frank Luntz. As always, Frank, we thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.